Welcome to Miami. It's September 2016. I got fed up working, so packed my job in and decided to cycle across the USA from Miami to LA, as you do. This was my first attempt at making a video and was filmed with only a GoPro and my phone. If you want to watch this trip while listening to an amazing soundtrack instead of listening to my below par narrative skills, you can access it via the link in the details. Personally, I think the other one is much better, but if you have 40 minutes of your life you don't mind losing, then watch them both and leave a comment telling me which one you prefer. It wouldn't be a trip to Florida without going for a spin on an airboat. A great experience and a fun way to see the Everglades. Starting at Miami South Beach, I had 71 days to get to LA to catch my flight home. After a few days sightseeing and rebuilding the bike, it was time to hit the road. This first section took me along the Miami Beach bike trail. No traffic here, only a few pedestrians to try and avoid. Not always easy when they walk straight in front of you. At the end of the beach trail, I headed inland and had to get accustomed to biking on the right side of the road, which was the wrong side for me. After negotiating the Everglades Wildlife Management Area, the Lake Okeechobee Trail was the next traffic-free section, biking round the lake, and it was also my first night pitching the tent. After a couple of days, following some minor roads, I finally reached the Teco-Auburndale Trail. It's only about 10 kilometres long, but at the far end it joined the Van Fleet Trail, which was a tad longer at nearly 50k, where the tent was pitched again. Closes at sundown, not the best sign to see when you're planning on camping somewhere on the trail. After packing up the tent, it was 32k to the Withlacoochee Trail, another 75 kilometres of traffic-free paths on what I can only presume was an old railway line. After a night's sleep on the side of the trail, probably illegally, well, I suppose it's only illegal if you get caught, it was back on the road for a bit, then onto the Nature Coast Trail and across the Swanee River. At the end of this trail I had to join Highway 98, not the busiest of roads, but this is where I realised how vulnerable you were on a bike. Even with two lanes, vehicles would zoom past a wee bit too close for comfort. So I decided it was safer to stick to cycling in the hard shoulder. Another morning on Highway 98 before reaching St Mark's and getting onto the Tallahassee-St Mark's Trail all the way to the city. After 3 days of biking and camping, it was good to get to a hotel and a shower in Tallahassee. First major water crossing over Grand Lagoon and first real hill so far getting over a bridge. As the previous week, biking through Florida had been pretty flat. To get off the highway, I headed down to Reverie Beach and on to Pensacola Beach. 162 kilometres is a long way with a broken spoke from the day before, especially when you have to get to the bike shop before it closes at 6 p.m. Taking this detour was a good idea as there were hardly any ignorant motorists to avoid, and biking along the thin strip of land between the lagoon and the Gulf of Mexico was far more enjoyable than continuing to pedal along Highway 98. Pensacola was the last night in Florida. 9 days and just over 1,200 kilometres through the Sunshine State had been a bit of a slog, especially with a fully loaded bike weighing just over 50 kilos. Into Alabama, then Mississippi the next day to the first of 2 long beaches in the trip, the other one being in LA. Great to see a decent path along the beach so I didn't have to pedal along the road. After 3 states in 3 days while dodging the traffic, it was great to be back on another trail. This one was the Tammany Trace Trail, and it led to Hammond for the night. Cycling along minding my own business, I got rammed from behind by an ignorant tanker driver, which sent me flying through the air and onto the side of the road. This ended my bike tour across the States. Luckily, I only suffered some road rash and bruised ribs, as you can see in these images. Considering what hit me, I was probably lucky to be alive. After a quick visit to the hospital for a check-up to see if I was as okay as I was before the accident, I changed the 2 wheels to 4 and went on a road trip for the last 3 weeks in the USA. With a bit more horsepower under the foot, covering some distance was less of a problem, so I headed to Carlsbad Caverns, which I wouldn't have seen if I was still on the bike. Followed by a few more national parks. Kashakatuwe, I think that's how you pronounce it, or Tent Rocks National Monument. After Tent Rocks, I had a quick look around the Bandelier National Monument, which wasn't as impressive as the rock formations at the Tent Rock site. On the way to Monument Valley, a slight detour took me in past the Four Corners Monument. This is where 4 states meet at the corner of Colorado, Utah, Arizona and New Mexico, so you can be in 4 different states at the same time, as I'm trying to demonstrate here. Monument Valley. This place is amazing and probably has one of the best views from a campsite anywhere in the world. These time lapses were taken next to the tent at sunset and sunrise. The Grand Canyon was a place I was going to pass through on the bike, but since I was now in a car I had a few days up my sleeve, so managed to do a bit of hiking. First along the rim trail, not the best place to walk if you're scared of heights, especially when there are no safety barriers and the path gets pretty close to the edge. Although it does provide some stunning views, you really need to go here to appreciate the scale, as these images don't do any justice. Then the next day I headed down the South Kaibab Trail. As you can see here, it meanders its way down the edge of the cliff, precariously close to the edge for the first section. I didn't have enough time to hike from the south rim to the north rim, so only went so far before turning back. After a morning on the Kaibab Trail, I decided to see what the Bright Angel trailhead was like. Also pretty impressive, but not as much as the Kaibab Trail. Which one did you prefer? Leave a comment. On the way to Las Vegas, I tried to follow as much of Route 66 as possible, but must have had a lack in motivation to do some filming, so I only have a few images to show. This is a view from the bridge on Interstate 93, and this is the view looking back up to the bridge from the top of the dam. After competing in WTM last year, 2015, the plan was to get there in time to volunteer after biking across from Florida. This is just after the start, when everyone is looking fresh and raring to go. Speeded up a bit, obviously. This was the stunning sunset and sunrise. If you're not sure what world's toughest mudder is, it's a 5-mile obstacle course with around 20 obstacles, and you have to complete as much laps as possible in 24 hours. This is the last lap, and these guys in the yellow bibs were the leaders of the pairs race, both having completed 100 miles each. 24 hours down, and the individual race winners lead the procession across the finish line. After a few days exploring Las Vegas, it was time to hit the road again. First stop was Death Valley, a bit of a weird place in the middle of the continent, 85 metres below sea level. Just looked like a big salt pan. After crossing the Sierra Nevada mountains, I made it to the west coast and spent a few days exploring San Francisco. While in San Francisco, I managed to get a ticket for my first NFL game, the 49ers versus the Patriots at Levi Stadium. A bit pricey for a ticket, but worth it for a one-off experience, even if it does drag on a bit. few days driving down the Pacific Coast Highway to Los Angeles, where I dropped off the car and had 5 days to explore LA. Another city, another sporting event, basketball this time, LA Lakers via Atlanta Hawks. Much more entertaining than an NFL game and a better atmosphere. A quick look at the Walk of Fame to see the stars on the street and all the film rolls on the roof of Hollywood and Vine subway station. I wonder how many folk miss this because they are staring at their phones and don't look up. Staying in Long Beach, I had to go on the tour of the Queen Mary, a massive ship from the same era as the Titanic, which is now a hotel. This is Long Beach Beach, nothing too impressive compared to the beaches from back home. So that was the end of the coast-to-coast trip across the USA from Miami to LA. It didn't go according to plan, but at least I'm still alive to share the journey. 11 states in 64 days, 1,824 miles by bike, 70 by ambulance and 3,894 by car. If you've made it this far, hopefully you've enjoyed watching this video. If you'd like to see more, please consider hitting the subscribe button, and I will see you next time from somewhere in Scotland.